What if Yoda sent Anakin to Kashyyyk instead? What would happen then? We pick up with Mundi bringing up the droid attack on the Wookiees. Let's begin. The council chamber fell silent as Ki-Adi-Mundi voiced his concern about the droid attack on the Wookiees. Annoyed glances shifted toward Master Yoda. The Jedi operations on Kashyyyk were a significant revenue source for the Order, with Yoda claiming a substantial portion of the profits for himself. He was, after all, the only council member capable of tolerating those animals for extended periods, a fact he never let them forget. "Ah, matters here on Coruscant demand my presence, they do," Yoda declared, adopting his wise Grandmaster tone. "A delicate undertaking with the security force it is. Guidance through the shadowed pathways of the living force they require from me, personally." He paused, adding with pragmatic finality, "and good relations with the police I must maintain. Essential they are." A ripple of weary resignation passed through the council members. None knew the exact, sordid details of which back-alley deal or illicit operation required Yoda's personal attention this time, but the pattern, frequently involving clandestine arrangements facilitated by his friends within the Coruscant security force, was depressingly familiar. Mace Windu rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar throb of irritation. It wasn't necessarily the underlying crime. Pragmatism was sometimes needed. It was the insult. Yoda genuinely seemed to believe this tissue-thin veil of philosophical nonsense and talk of police relations actually fooled anyone in the room. The sheer condescending belief that they were all too dense to recognize his self-serving maneuvers was almost more offensive than whatever shady deal he was about to broker. "Then who will go?" Mundi pressed. "We cannot just let them die." They could, technically. The only reason this backwater animal planet reserve warranted any priority was because of the mind-expanding substances being cultivated there. Substances sold through Outer Rim medical corporations, controlled by Jedi shell companies. "Send someone else, we will," Yoda dismissed. "Discuss this later, we shall." Later, Obi-Wan was speaking to Anakin before one of the temple's immense arched windows, the sprawling Coruscant cityscape visible beyond them. The usual ease between them vanished as Obi-Wan began. "Anakin, the Council want you to report on his dealings. To be their eyes and ears." "Eyes and ears, A familiar aged voice invaded the atmosphere. Yoda approached with surprising speed, his Geimer stick tapping urgently on the floor. He stopped before them, radiating impatience. "Spying? Nonsense from Windu and his overthinking, that is. Waste of time." He fixed his gaze on Obi-Wan. "More important matters for Skywalker I have. Forget this assignment. Leave us." Obi-Wan looked taken aback, both by the interruption and the dismissal of a council directive. "Master Yoda, with respect, the council believes..." "Believe?" Yoda scoffed, cutting him off sharply. "Irrelevant what the council believes. Even together, their midichlorian count falls short of mine and young Skywalker's combined." He sniffed derisively. "Their M count's low, brain cells lower, perhaps." He jabbed his stick toward the corridor again, focusing his intense gaze on Obi-Wan. "Important matters young Skywalker and I must discuss now. For those with high M counts, these matters are..." The implication, excluding Obi-Wan based purely on his comparatively lower count, was sharp and clear. "Leave us. Kriff, you must." Obi-Wan recoiled. The crude dismissal, the wild insults to the council, the way Yoda was bizarrely inflating Anakin's ego while boasting about their combined force potential. It all strongly suggested the Grandmaster was indulging in his mind-expanding activities again. Confronting Yoda when he was like this was against unspoken temple protocol, and generally pointless, besides. With a tight breath and a look that mixed warning with disbelief, Obi-Wan gave a stiff nod. "As you wish, Master." He turned and walked briskly away down the corridor. Yoda instantly pivoted to Anakin. "Listen closely, Skywalker," he said, his voice sharp with manufactured importance. "To Kashyyyk, you must go." Anakin, still processing the whiplash of Yoda insulting the council while bragging about their unmatched power levels before telling Obi-Wan to kriff off, protested vigorously. "Kashyyyk? Master, that spider-infested hellscape?" Like almost everyone else, he too hated that planet. "Cannot go myself," Yoda insisted sharply. "Vital work with the police requires my presence. A delicate operation. My unique perspective it needs." He held up a clawed hand before Anakin could even begin to question that flimsy excuse. "Besides, owe me you do, for helping establish your relationship with the Senator." "Saw it, I did. Obvious it was that you liked her." He leaned closer. "Obi-Wan?" complained he did. "Too much attachment, Master Yoda. Dangerous, it is," he whined. "Told him, shut the kriff up, I did. Made sure they sent you with her." He chuckled, a dry rasping sound. "Were it not for me, Master Mundi the council would have sent." Yoda tapped his cane emphatically on the floor, his expression turning firm. So, owe me you do. Also, do this and the rank of master. Grant you myself, I will. No need for council approval. Help me, Anakin. My only hope you are. Only you have the midichlorian count needed for this task. At this point, Anakin brought up his visions again. Master Yoda, I can't leave Coruscant now. These visions keep getting worse. Someone I care about, suffering, dying. I need to stay here to protect them. Yoda shook his head dismissively, waving a clawed hand. Just do as I advised, Anakin, and fine, everything will be. I can't just train myself to let go of everything I fear to lose, Anakin argued, quoting Yoda's earlier advice verbatim. I will not just let them die, and even if I wanted to, I can't just train myself to be content with losing them. That's not how neuroscience works. Yoda sighed heavily. What I meant was, don't worry about the visions. Acting on them is what causes them to come true. Self-fulfilling prophecies, they become... Anakin just stared, momentarily stunned into silence. The bluntness of it rattled him, like a slap he hadn't seen coming. Why didn't you just say this when I first came to you? Thought you would understand. I did, Yoda said, glancing away. The truth was that Anakin had caught him in the middle of some mind expansion, and the Grandmaster had been desperately trying to sound profound while completely baked, as Shakti called it. So you're saying I already know how to stop these visions? Just don't worry about them? Anakin's voice was incredulous, a mixture of relief and irritation warring on his features. Yoda proceeded to explain how Force visions functioned with the same principles as market predictions. He detailed how he had personally made 6 million credits last fiscal quarter by seeing Corellian shipping stocks falling in Force visions, but crucially by not acting on his impulse to sell. Had he panicked and sold his shares, he explained, he would have triggered a chain reaction, causing other investors to sell, creating the very crash he had foreseen. Instead, by remaining calm and holding his position, the market stabilized and his investments flourished. The Grandmaster emphasized that rushing to prevent a foreseen outcome often became the catalyst that brought that outcome into reality. With uncharacteristic clarity, he explained that observing, accepting, and adapting to visions yielded far better results than frantically trying to change them. As comprehension dawned on Anakin's face, Yoda felt momentary satisfaction at finally getting through to the troubled young Jedi. Seeing Anakin's reluctant acceptance, bought with promises of rank and reminders of past favors regarding Padme, Yoda finally got down to the actual mission. Protect the sacred groves on Kashyyyk, you must, he instructed. The droids, keep them away from the project. Those animals, he shook his head, cannot manage defense alone. Prone to ripping arms off each other, they are. Your task, keep them focused on the droids. To the clones, give no heed, they will. Need a powerful Jedi's presence, they do. For reasons Chewbacca will make clear. He waved a hand dismissively. My agricultural consultant, Chewbacca is. Brief you fully upon arrival, he will. On Kashyyyk, Anakin was greeted by Wookiees equipped with Wookiee-to-basic converters, devices mandated by Yoda. The Grandmaster had dismissed their language as sounding like the screams a being makes while getting kicked hard in the groin. As a result, all interacting Wookiees wore the converters, which rendered their growls into flat, robotic, basic. Clone intelligence reports indicated that Separatist forces had established a beachhead on the eastern peninsula and were advancing toward their position. The battle remained distant for now, sporadic flashes of artillery fire visible only as faint pulses on the horizon, but Commander Gree estimated less than a standard day before the droid army would reach the facility. This temporary calm would soon give way to the full fury of war. Chewbacca led Anakin away from the command post, down a narrow path that overlooked the valley below. Processing platforms and cultivation fields stretched across the horizon, disappearing into the mist that clung to the distant tree line. Throughout the expanse, Wookiees towered over workstations, their massive forms dwarfing the Ewoks scurrying between the cultivated rows. The smaller creatures hauled baskets and tools, their fur matted with sweat and soil. The air carried the pungent sweetness of lunaweed mixed with the more primal sense of the forest.
Most of the clone officers know what truly happens here,
Chewbacca said through his translator, the mechanical voice creating an odd contrast with his imposing physical presence.
The rank and file follow orders without questions. No satellites orbit Kashyyyk that aren't Jedi-controlled. This operation remains invisible to the Senate and Republic intelligence.
Below them, 2 Ewoks fought over a scrap of food, teeth bared, rolling dangerously close to a harvesting blade. A Wookiee overseer bellowed and kicked them both, sending them tumbling into another Wookiee who was sorting crates. That Wookiee roared, abandoning its work to confront the first. Within moments, 4 beings, Wookiees and Ewoks alike, descended into a chaotic brawl among the delicate plants.
"This is what these animals are like,"
Chewbacca observed, not bothering to intervene.
"No discipline, no focus. Left alone, they'd destroy the entire harvest fighting over nothing."
Anakin surveyed the operation. The cultivation fields extended far beyond what he could see, disappearing into valleys and climbing up distant slopes, an enterprise of staggering scale. "Why do the Wookiees agree to this?" Anakin asked, watching as another fight broke out on a different platform.
"They believe they're performing divine service."
Chewbacca adjusted his bandolier.
"Yoda visited the tribal councils years ago. He levitated their chieftains, manipulated their minds with force visions of an eternal hunting ground. Now they worship the Jedi, believe you'll lead them to paradise when they die protecting these fields."
He gestured toward the laboring Ewoks.
"The little ones were imported from elsewhere. Yoda performed similar tricks there, demonstrated force abilities, triggered primitive superstition, convinced their shamans that spiritual purification requires labor in service to the sky gods. They work for nothing but promises of enlightenment. More efficient than droids and impossible to trace."
A commotion erupted on the nearest platform as an Ewok tried to bite the ankle of a distracted Wookiee. The massive creature seized the smaller one by its throat and hurled it across the platform.
"Our job is keeping the droids away from the operation. The Separatists can't be allowed to discover what we're cultivating."
He fixed Anakin with a calculating look.
"The faithful need their prophet. Move some rocks with your mind. Prophecy glory. They'll fight to their last breath believing they're securing eternal reward."
Anakin stared at the fields where Ewoks scurried between rows under Wookiee supervision, at the processing stations where the Luna weed was prepared for off-world transport, at the clone troopers positioned strategically throughout the compound, wearing expressions that suggested they understood precisely what enterprise they protected. "Yoda never mentioned this in the briefing," he said quietly. Chewbacca's translator emitted what might have been a laugh.
"Ha ha 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 ha, he never does."
Soon Anakin stood atop a ceremonial platform overlooking the assembled Wookiees and Ewoks. With a calculated gesture, he lifted a dozen boulders simultaneously, spinning them in complex patterns. The gathered crowd dropped to their knees, growling and chittering in reverence. "I am the voice from the outer world," Anakin proclaimed, his words instantly converted through the ceremonial platform's translation matrix. His declaration echoed across the valley in the rumbling growls of Shriwook and the high-pitched chirps of Ewokies, amplified by speakers strategically positioned throughout the gathering grounds. The cosmic pathways open to those who defend these sacred fields. He infused his voice with force suggestion, feeling the ripple of awe spreading through the assembled beings. "Each droid you destroy brings you one step closer to eternal glory." Commander Gree watched from the sidelines, face impassive, but eyes gleaming with calculated approval. The performance worked beyond expectation. Within hours, Wookiee battle parties charged separatist positions with unprecedented ferocity. Ewoks slipped behind enemy lines, sabotaging equipment with complete disregard for personal safety. They fought not as soldiers, but as zealots, each seeking martyrdom for their newfound deity. By the end of that day, the droid army had been pushed back beyond the outermost cultivation zones. Anakin watched from a command post as a Wookiee war party dismantled the final battle droid, the creature tearing its limbs apart with ritualistic precision. "They believe dying in combat guarantees immediate transcendence," Gree remarked, removing his helmet. "Your little speech expedited things considerably." Anakin's smirk faltered. "They're dying for narcotics production." "They're dying believing they'll find paradise," Gree corrected. "Most beings never get such comfort." Chewbacca approached, carrying a sealed container under one arm.
"The premium batch,"
he announced.
"First harvest from the northeastern quadrant."
He set the container down and removed a sleek metal vaporizer from his bandolier, carefully loading dried Luna weed from the container into the device's chamber. With practiced movements, he adjusted several settings, and the vaporizer hummed to life, a soft blue glow emanating from its core. Anakin glanced at the monitors. There was no real battle left. The Wookiees were fighting each other to kill the last droids, turning cleanup into a contest. The Ewoks stripped parts like scavengers. It was over. They just hadn't stopped. "General," Commander Gree stated evenly, indicating the vaporizer as Chewbacca prepared it, "Yoda's standing orders prohibit consuming the product while on assignment." Anakin turned from the monitors, a dismissive smirk playing on his lips. "Yoda isn't here, Commander." Chewbacca rumbled what might have been agreement through his translator, proffering the now-ready vaporizer with its mouthpiece extended. Gree gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, accepting the General's override of protocol. "Understood, sir," Gree continued, his tone neutral as he nodded toward the device. Minutes later, stretched across meditation cushions, they inhaled the shimmering vapor. Reality bent around them, fragmenting into cascading possibilities. Anakin perceived entire timelines branching from single decisions, witnessed alternate versions of himself across 1,000 dimensions. Chewbacca's growls became cosmic music. Gree described seeing through the eyes of his identical brothers simultaneously. "This," Anakin managed before another dimension pulled at his consciousness. "This explains so much about Yoda." The precipice afforded Obi-Wan Kenobi an unobstructed view of the Separatist conclave below. Grievous's metallic form dominated the gathering, a technological perversion that had once been organic, now little more than a vessel for hatred and Dooku's failed legacy. Obi-Wan's initial strategy had been informed by Yoda's peculiar tactical suggestion, the application of pigmentation to create the illusion of a tunnel entrance upon the sheer rock face of the adjacent mountain. The Grandmaster had theorized that Grievous might be deceived into piloting his vehicle into the fabricated passage. Obi-Wan had dismissed this approach as unworthy of the gravity of their mission. The Republic teetered on collapse. Billions of lives hung in the delicate balance of this conflict. Instead, he withdrew from his tactical gear a red, cylindrical explosive device. The detonator's fuse sputtered to life as he applied his igniter, the chemical reaction cascading down the braided cord with methodical inevitability. With precision honed through years of battlefield improvisation, Obi-Wan positioned the explosive in a rudimentary projectile launcher fashioned from components of his utility belt. The slingshot's tensile properties, while primitive, would prove sufficient for the task at hand. He exhaled, centering himself in the Force, and released the mechanism. The projectile arced through the air, its trajectory a precise testament to Obi-Wan's battlefield finesse. The detonator struck its target with unerring accuracy, impacting the precise junction where Grievous's cranial casing met his reinforced vertebral column. General Grievous, destroyer of worlds and scourge of the Republic war machine, suspended his strategic discourse on fleet deployments, his organic eyes, preserved within his skull-like mask, fixed on the cylindrical object that had landed at his feet. The device, red and unassuming, revealed nothing of the fuse that had already burned its way into the sealed casing, the deadly countdown proceeding unseen within its crimson shell. The cyborg general's duranium digits snatched up the object with thoughtless haste. A faint hissing emanated from within the cylinder, a sound his battle-addled mind immediately interpreted as the power cell of an exotic lightsaber. Unusual craftsmanship for a lightsaber, Grievous wheezed, his damaged lungs struggling to support his words. His obsession with collecting the weapons of his enemies had long ago overwhelmed whatever tactical intelligence remained in his organic brain. The fuse continued to burn as the general turned the explosive in his hands, already imagining how this strange lightsaber would hang at his waist. Another trophy, another symbol of his superiority over those who wielded powers he could never possess. "This will make a fine addition to my collection." The words died in his throat as the detonator's timing mechanism reached its inevitable conclusion. The resulting detonation reconfigured the molecular structure of Grievous and his immediate confederates into their component atoms. The concussive force propagated outward in accordance with the fundamental laws of thermodynamics, leaving only Newt Gunray partially intact, the Neimoidian having momentarily excused himself to review Trade Federation financial projections on his personal data terminal for the 10th time in that standard hour. His lower extremities were cleanly severed at the waist, a casualty of the blast's asymmetrical force distribution. "Initiate containment protocol," Obi-Wan transmitted to Commander Cody via encrypted channel. The 212th Attack Battalion descended upon the decimated Separatist position with military precision that belied their true intent. Rather than establishing a security perimeter or tending to potential survivors, they executed what was clearly a well-rehearsed acquisition operation. Credits, narcotic substances, and objects of value disappeared into specialized containment units with remarkable efficiency. Obi-Wan activated his datapad, positioning himself with calculated poise among the scorched fragments of General Grievous. The broadcast indicator lit up. This was his moment to show the galaxy that one didn't need the highest midichlorian count to end a war. "Citizens of the Republic," he declared with solemn authority. "General Kenobi reporting from Utapau. General Grievous has been neutralized through precise tactical deployment of explosives." Viewer metrics surged. Donation pings chimed in his periphery like applause. As the count passed 1 billion, he stepped closer to the mangled form of Newt Gunray, ensuring the Viceroy remained visible in frame. "Please, help me," Gunray wheezed, his voice ragged with pain. Obi-Wan knelt beside him, datapad tilted just right to capture the Neimoidian's face and monitor HoloNet engagement. "Not to worry," he offered dryly. "You're still living half a body." He tapped a quick sequence into his wristcom, connecting to a nearby unit. "Send in a medical droid to my location." A GH-7 unit rolled in, deploying an array of implements around the shredded Neimoidian. Gunray writhed, eyes darting, voice cracking under the weight of delirium and loss. "It was Sidious," Gunray cried, addressing Obi-Wan and the entire HoloNet stream. "We only wanted peace." In the background, clone troopers hauled crates of narcotics and financial safes toward the gunships. Gunray's eyes widened in horror as one of them hoisted his personal vault, always kept close due to pathological financial anxiety. "No!" he screamed. "Please, please don't take it!" One clone paused, glanced back, and casually flipped him off before disappearing into the gunship. The HoloNet feed erupted. Laugh reacts, xenophobic slurs, fire emojis streaking across the screen. The top donor's comment was flagged and hidden as too vile to display. The medical droid beeped. "Medically, the patient is stable. However, for reasons we cannot explain, we are losing him." "He's dying?" Obi-Wan asked. "We don't know why. He has lost the will to live." Gunray's breathing slowed. His eyes never left the vault, now vanishing from view. "There are still credits in my account." "I know. There is still," he whispered as delirium overtook him. Then, flatline. "May he rest in peace," Obi-Wan muttered, standing. Fire emojis rained down. Donation alerts popped up faster than he could read. On Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine prepared to execute Order 66. He contacted Anakin repeatedly to make his offer, but Anakin, binging Luna with Chewbacca, was completely incapacitated. When he finally answered Palpatine, he merely hummed yes at everything, including Sidious's revelation about being a Sith Lord. After ending the call, Anakin used his few functioning brain cells to forward the recording to the Council, making it their problem, then immediately passed out again. Yoda was watching his favorite HoloNet show, Beyond Terrified Delinquents, where inmates were now forcing a 50-year-old human teacher to do push-ups while reciting math formulas. Beyond Terrified Delinquents was usually a reality show where inmates yelled at misbehaving younglings in a theatrical attempt at reform. For this special episode, however, the producers, along with Lieutenant Griffin and several inmates, had conspired to accidentally lock security personnel outside, while keeping the camera crew, younglings, and their guardians inside the facility. The goal? Let the inmates verbally terrorize the teachers and parents instead of the younglings, all to boost plummeting ratings. Usually the show featured only the younglings, who were forced to participate by either their parents or teachers acting with parental consent. The adults were kept away during filming, but this time, for reasons never explained, the teachers and parents were kept inside with the younglings, while security was accidentally locked out. Everyone had already signed waivers, so there was no risk of legal fallout. The muscular Zabrak inmate Drek Malvos repeatedly slammed a metal chair against the floor, towering over a trembling math teacher. "You got 1 minute to make him understand fractions, asshole," he barked, gently nudging a confused youngster forward. "If he doesn't, I'm using this chair to teach you how to calculate force equals mass times acceleration, with your face." Meanwhile, Big Alpha and 3 other inmates surrounded a group of parents, pointing accusingly. "You sent your son here for not doing homework? What kind of bitch does that?" Yoda howled with laughter at the spectacle, gripping the sides of his cushion as tears ran down his ancient face, until Mace Windu's urgent call finally interrupted his entertainment. Annoyed at the interruption, Yoda reluctantly made his way to the council chamber, still streaming his show on his datapad. The other council members were already gathered, their expressions grave. "Could not wait, this matter," Yoda grumbled, settling into his seat while positioning his datapad to continue watching. "We've been trying to contact Anakin without success," Mace explained, his tone sharp with impatience. "But he sent over a recording of a conversation with Chancellor Palpatine that you need to hear immediately." Mace activated the holotransmission. The blue-tinted figures of Palpatine and Anakin materialized in the center of the chamber. The audio crackled to life with Palpatine's voice. "The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities, some consider to be unnatural," Palpatine was saying, his tone shifting from grandfatherly to something more sinister. Came Anakin's distant, disconnected response. "I am the Sith Lord you've been looking for," Palpatine continued. "Yes," Anakin mumbled, clearly not processing what he was hearing. From Yoda's datapad came the muffled sounds of inmates shouting, chairs crashing, and a terrified physics teacher frantically reciting the viscous drag force equation. Yoda struggled to suppress his laughter, earning glares from the other council members. "Did you know only through me can you achieve a power greater than any Jedi?" Palpatine continued. Anakin hummed again, sounding completely incapacitated. When the recording ended, silence filled the council chamber, broken only by a particularly loud shout from Yoda's datapad about deadbeat parents. Mace Windu stood, his face hardened with resolve. "He is too dangerous to be left alive." "Who?" Yoda asked, finally looking up from his show. "Palpatine, Master," Mace said, annoyed by Yoda's apparent lack of attention as they discussed the predicament. "The Sith have been extinct for a millennium," Ki-Adi-Mundi stated, freshly returned from Maigito. With Grievous dead and the battlefield cleared, there was no one left to use his flamethrower on, much to his visible disappointment. "No," Mace began, but Ki-Adi cut him off. "Sith have been extinct for a millennium," he repeated, growing increasingly angry. Ki-Adi had always hated being proven wrong, and he especially hated Palpatine for making him wrong right now. Yoda silenced everyone. "Perhaps talk to this Sith. Mundi should, Mundi nodded and left immediately. "Two birds, one stone," Yoda explained to the remaining council. "Mundi will kill Palpatine, and if caught, be executed for murder, relieving the council of his child support payments." Everyone nodded sagely. Mundi activated a comm jammer and, along with 3 force-nullifying Isalamiri, strapped it into a backpack on his back. He wouldn't need the force for this. Then he made his way to Palpatine's office. When the guards tried to stop him, he shot them dead and walked in. "Master Mundi," Palpatine started with his Chancellor Act. "The Sith have been extinct for a millennium," Mundi stated coldly. Then he struck. With the force, nullified by the Isalamiri, strapped to his back, it was nothing but raw speed, training, and rage. The first blow came fast. Mundi slammed his boot into Palpatine's knee, shattering it with a sickening crunch. The Sith Lord crumpled, shrieking, but Mundi didn't hesitate. He grabbed a decorative vase from a side table, an expensive Naboo relic, and bludgeoned Palpatine across the face. Porcelain cracked. So did Palpatine's jaw. A molar flew out and hit the window with a soft tap before spiraling to the floor. Palpatine tried to crawl. Mundi kicked him in the ribs, then brought the vase down again, once, twice, a third time, until the man's face resembled a smashed melon, and the vase shattered in his hand. Breathing hard but focused, Mundi moved fast. He pulled a small incendiary device from his belt pouch, activated it, and dropped it beneath Palpatine's motionless body. Flames burst to life, swallowing the velvet carpeting, crawling up the drapes. Mundi turned and walked out, face expressionless. No alarms were triggered. The surveillance systems had all been undergoing routine maintenance, courtesy of certain Jedi-connected contractors. He vanished into the alleys of the Senate District, unseen. Later, the Republic Security Force, the police, arrived, but the officers on the scene had long since been bought off. Lieutenant Commander Lois, deep in the Jedi's pocket, filed the report herself. According to her report, Palpatine died during a cartel meeting gone wrong, and the case was closed. The Jedi issued a statement of sympathy. No investigation followed. 20 kilos of spice were conveniently discovered at the scene, labeled for Palpatine, a spelling error that no one bothered to question. Within days, Palpatine was declared dead due to illegal dealings with Outer Rim spice syndicates. With the war over and Palpatine dead, peace returned to the galaxy, at least on paper, but weeks passed with no word from Anakin, Commander Gree, or Chewbacca. Even Padme began to worry. Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Mace eventually went searching. What they found on Kashyyyk was pure madness. A section of Yoda's farm had been scorched after a group of Wookiees began praying to an unexploded bomb they mistook for a Force artifact. It became the center of a bizarre ritual, until one Ewok tried to eat the bomb, calling it hot tree candy. It detonated. The resulting vapor cloud got everyone, including the clones, catatonically high. The Ewoks, in a hunger-fueled haze, had started eating each other. The Wookiees were draped across tree roots, whispering nonsense and trying to arm-wrestle rocks. Clones had begun painting motivational slogans on grenades. As for Anakin, Gree, and Chewbacca, they were found upriver by the Jedi search team, shirtless, tattooed, and half-mad. Anakin and Gree had smeared mud across their faces, insisting it was to mask their heat signatures from something hiding in the trees. Chewbacca was draped in vines, humming softly to himself. They claimed they had tried to get back to Coruscant, but that their ship was malfunctioning. When examined, the ship's issue was found. It wasn't a ship at all, but an empty Lunaweed crate. Meanwhile, Yoda used the Force to boost ratings for Beyond Terrified Delinquents and prevented its cancellation.